is Ben Bertucci, and this is So Nito.
Yeah, he knew nothing about car.
I'm Maurice Merrick, and this is the story of the making of Ben's film, One of One.
I mean, I knew that, you can tell when you see certain cars, you're like, okay, that car is,
special.
Yeah. Been shooting cars for probably 6 or 8 months, when I first met them. What attracted me to them beyond the cars and beyond the other people that I had met in Japan or in the car world was that there was just this dynamic within this family that was so appealing and so interesting. His father was just a really, really unique character,
Give me some examples.
He can look at a car or look at a person and just, he can just read you. His friends or his clients or even his sons will sometimes sit in his showroom and listen to him talk for hours, and he can just talk about, the body of a car or the engine of a car and just talk to them about it for hours, and they just sit there and listen to him and learn things about how he sees cars and people. And so, one of the things that made my work with the Naitos so easy was So. He really saw, I think, in me this chance to kind of build something together where it was like he had access to his family's cars, his father's cars, and I had cameras and a desire to make, beautiful images and do things. And I wasn't this guy that was like, hey, I could sell this movie to this person and we could do car stuff. It was like, no, I just want to hang out with your family and learn about your family and do some cool stuff.
Well, let's talk about the cars, because not only do you have customer cars that you service, but you're also maintaining a family collection.
Mostly maintain our collection because we have, the small number of customers. That because of, to maintain high quality restoration, we only need, the few, good customers.
Right. You don't have to do a volume business.
Yeah. And luckily, we and our customer are on same page, so they 100% trust what we are doing.
So some of the cars in the collection, a Ferrari 250 Le Mans.
911R.
911R, yeah, indeed.
It's not only the vintage car, but also, modern sports car like Ferrari and So, F40 now.
A 993
RSR,
yeah.
The one I love is the Maurice Mini Cooper S Mark 1.
Right.
Which we bought in 1978. So it's pretty long ownership.
I love early cars. First or second year of a model, they're always more pure in a way. You agree?
100% agree.
Yeah. Your dad probably feels that way too.
Yeah.
He's got a very good eye.
Yeah, his habit was always like, so don't follow trend. Buy what you like, what you love.
Good advice.
I think so.
It's a good way to go.
Yeah, it works well to me.
So Ben, once the Naito family agreed to have you come in and make this documentary, what was your approach from a filmmaker's point of view?
Film everything. It was very simple. I mean, it was just as much time as I could get with the family. It was very sort of closed off at first, where it was just like I was given little pieces. So I started with interviewing. I interviewed his father. I interviewed So. I interviewed Kei. A lot of it was me, talking with So about ideas and saying, hey, could we get your dad to do this thing? Or could we get your dad to do this interview? Or could I interview the shop foreman? Or could I interview Shigeru, the brother of Masao? And it was just So and I kind of like, that's why sometimes we say he's the producer, because, he really did, produce all of those shoots. And a lot of times, when you see that LM driving down the street, that's So is driving my rental car, and that's us driving from the workshop to the showroom. I mean, it's not like we were like, close down the street and get, no, I mean, we were just like, we got to take the car back to the showroom. Let's shoot it while we're doing that.
Absolutely.
now that the movie is done and I'm happy with it, and it looks the way that it does, and it's got the feel of it. I'm a little bit more inclined to tell people how green I was when I first met them, because I really knew very, very little about cars, but also about shooting cars, And so I showed up to Tokyo sometimes with this, with really kind of ragtag kind of filming gear. And it was just like, I just got to get this. I got to get this, I got to get this done. I got to get these guys on camera. This is such an opportunity. And I was just like renting gear on credit cards and just, trying to make it work, because I just felt, there's something that I felt about their story and about my relationship with So, and just about what the potential of it could be.
Was there ever a worry that they would see that you're kind of learning as you go and maybe...
Well, no, because they had never filmed really with anybody.
Okay, so they didn't know what they were looking at.
I had that working for me. It was like,
good.
If they were like, obviously if it was like, some very famous race car driver, or, if it was some famous family that had, that was media savvy, of course, they would see me show up, with my backpack and be like, what is this?
Yeah, as I said, he is not, car guy, so his, way of shooting was really new to us. So that's why, he had got, my dad said, oh, Ben has got great taste, so let's keep shooting our cars.
Ben, I think you've got a really signature style, I have to tell you. And the film unfolds in a really deliberate way. And by that, I mean, you take your time.
That's very nice. I appreciate that, Maurice. I mean, I really developed that style and that sort of look, I think, in working with them, because a lot of times it was like, all right, meet us at the showroom, at 7 a.m., 7:30, we'll drive to the workshop and we'll start working. And it was never like, Ben, don't put your camera there, or don't film this, or, can you move over? It was like, they literally just treated me like I was part of the company and ignored me most of the time. And so I just sort of watched as the sort of work and the story just kind of unfolded in front of my eyes. And so, yeah, so I appreciate your compliment. And also I just, it was a bit of a challenge because, to make a feature length film where nothing really happens, there's really not like any, sort of big action, there's no like, wild fight. I don't want to spoil it, but there's no like wild fights, or car crashes, or nothing blows up, or, and so it's just, I had to just kind of like get people invested in this family and this story and just the work, because to me that was just so fascinating. It was like there was never music, there was never a rush, there was never like, yelling and talking. It was just kind of like, we're here, we're working. It was like, sometimes on those car shows you get that sort of forced schedule, where they're like, is So gonna be able to finish the carburetor rebuild by 4 o'clock? And then cut to commercial, and you know what I mean? It's like, there's no real deadline. They're just kind of like forcing this sort of cliffhanger on you so that you keep watching after the commercial. So
that's what I'm talking about, Ben, in terms of it's just the life of the shop and the men who work there.
Right.
And their dynamic together. You must have gotten to know each one of them just through your lens and just through observing.
Yeah, well, that's a great question, because the business, obviously there's a dynamic and there's a hierarchy. It's very particular as well in Japanese culture, which I sort of learned, Masao in particular. You realize that, the way he talks, the way his mannerisms are, and the way that he sort of deliberates tasks to each different person is completely different, Sometimes, with his sons, there's different ways that he talks to each son, you know. And then he's got his brother who was his employee, and then the shop foreman who's also his employee, but who he sort of looks up to in a bit, who has actually been working at Naito longer than Masao. You know, people that know more about Japanese culture and family life can sort of wax poetic on it better than me. But I've watched this family for many, many years, and it's so fascinating.
Most shops that work on cars of this caliber, at least in the United States and Europe, are kind of surgically clean. They have state-of-the-art equipment. Everything is just perfectly neat. And that's not Naito.
Yeah, so many people say your workshop is awesome, you know, it's a good vibe and stuff like that. But you know, to us, it's very natural. You know, it's simply we haven't got any time to maintain our workshop. So
the shop is cramped. Mm-hmm. It's dimly lit, I think. There's clutter. Mm-hmm. You guys are sitting on like plastic crates.
Yeah,
that's right.
Working on parts.
Right. That's the way my grandpa did. So we have to pass on the tradition, and we protect the tradition. So I want to keep, doing this business as much as we can in this way.
That was probably a function of your grandfather just not having a lot of money to invest in the shop and having to make ends meet early on, right? And being thrifty, because post-war Japan was a difficult place to make a living.
Yeah, he wasn't that good to make money. So this is the big reason my dad start import the car.
Mm-hmm.
He has such deep respect and reverence for his father, as a mechanic.
Yeah.
And just as a man, I mean, Shinichi was totally self-taught, and got this job with Nakajima Aircraft, which actually after the war was closed and became Subaru. And so, he got this job at this very, very high technical, very high skilled, engineering shop, having never gone to school, which was just unheard of in Japan. And so, Masao had this reverence for his father that was like almost godly, but he always said, my father just had no concerns about money. He just wanted to work on engines.
Ben, you never met Shinichi, did you?
That's right. He passed in 2010.
Okay.
So 7 years before I met the Naitos.
And you started the project in 2018?
17, 18. Yeah.
17, 18.
Yeah.
So a very long road.
That's right.
Do you think that was actually fortuitous, that it took this long to make the film?
I mean, if you want to call it that, that'd be great. I mean, there's no way that I could have told this story in 2018.
Right.
As a filmmaker, I didn't have the skills to do it. And I don't know, I feel like I hadn't sacrificed enough at that time,
Let's say you had a much bigger budget and you didn't have to struggle. It might have been a completely different project if it had been relatively effortless and had taken maybe a year.
Right. Well, you're talking about the director's dilemma, which is filmmakers who have an eye and a talent. Their first few films are always thought of as being the best because they're struggling, they're putting everything they have into it, and then later in their careers, when the world is at their hands and they have all the money that they need, they kind of sit back in their cozy chair and tell other people what to do, and their movies aren't as good. The other thing too was this sort of integrity that goes into creating something on your own, and doing it yourself, to live and die sort of on your shoulders, rather than sort of saying, Warner Brothers gave me, $10 million to do this thing, and if it doesn't work out, it's like, but my relationship with So and with the family was so important to me as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, but also just as a person, you know, that it was like, I really was willing to sort of sacrifice and to put my heart and soul into this film because I thought they deserved it and I deserved it. And the other thing too is that, you know, the people that have been following our work, they deserved it, you know.
The cars become characters in the film. How did you approach that part of it? Because there's a lot of rolling shots.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the car shoots were just So and I talking about, man, it would be so cool to see this car at this location. We should do it. Okay, let me ask my dad. Okay, we can do it. You know, and then that was it. And so, you know, in the editing, everything feels a bit more deliberate, you know, and it is in the editing of it, but in the shooting of it, it was really just like, man, this 993 RSR would look so good on the highway at sunrise. Let's just shoot it. And so we would shoot it, and then we would put clips or photos on Instagram, and that's really how because we were sort of promoting the film before we even knew we were going to make this film.
There's an electricity to the rolling shots and then the night shots, and there's this kind of like atmospheric feel to it. I love it. And the cars come alive.
Yeah.
At what point did you decide on a title?
Yeah, I was kind of back and forth about the title, and I was like, it's got to be something, you know, that talks about the generations of the family and this family dynamic. I actually was creating a list of the cars that the family owns, you know. And a lot of the cars are quite rare, you know, like this Lotus 11 Coventry Climax, which is like one of two, or their Porsche 907, which the short tail was like one of four. The 250 LM, which was one of 32. And I was just like, oh, well, that's great. I mean, this family is just one of one.
I hope everyone sees this film. It's fantastic. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maurice.